in today's webinar, Digital Transformation for Nonprofits. My name is Yevgeny Sahenko, and I'm a supervisor at GRF CPAs and Advisors as a supervisor in the Outsourced Accounting and Advisory Services Department, and I will be today's moderator. So before we begin, I'd like to start off with some quick housekeeping items and explain what you'll need to do to earn CPE credit. Participants seeking CPE credit today must complete and submit a short evaluation survey that will appear automatically following our webinar. You'll be asked to recall the CPE words given in order to receive credit. Please remember to write the CPE words down when they're given and keep them until you receive your certificate, as they will not be provided again. If you have any technical questions or issues during the webinar, please use the questions function to speak with our webinar administrator for assistance. The slide deck and recording from today's webinar will be made available for download after the webinar has concluded. You will also receive a follow-up email with direct links. Technical support and CPE questions may be addressed to Nathan McLeveen at nmcelveen@grfcpa.com. And so today's learning objective is to provide attendees with a better understanding of how digital technology is changing the way nonprofits operate. And with that, I'll hand it over to Ricardo for introductions.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending our webinar, Digital Transformation for Nonprofits and Associations. It's a pleasure to have everyone listening in today. I know we're in the middle of difficult moments right now, but I'm Ricardo Trujillo. I'm one of the partners here at GRF, and I have mainly my expertise in this is in the assurance and advisory services, and that expands across a variety of organizations, including nonprofits and for-profits as well. I also lead the firm's information technology initiative, which I can help organizations bridge the gap between technology and business as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Melissa and each of us so we can introduce ourselves.
All right. Thank you, Ricardo. Hi, everybody. My name is Melissa Musser. I'm a principal in the Risk Advisory Services Group. I'm a CPA as well as a CITP and a CISA, just like Ricardo is, a Certified Information System Auditor. I've been a project manager for large-scale transformation initiatives such as ERP implementations and redesigns at a large university, as well as the project manager at a global organization's transition to a global shared services center in Hyderabad, India, as well as implementing enterprise risk management projects. We have a great team here today to help you with your digital transformation strategy. I'll turn it over to Tricia now to introduce herself.
Thanks, Melissa. Good morning, everybody. Wanting to introduce myself, I'm Tricia Catabini, and a senior manager here with GRF CPAs and Advisors. I have been in the public accounting practice for just over 13 years, working specifically with nonprofits for the last 8 years of my career. One of the pieces of my career, I also stepped out of public accounting about 1 year or 2 years ago at this point, and worked with an association. So not only do I have the background from the assurance and advisory side, but I also have some of that more hands-on operational experience as well that I am more than happy and willing to share with you today. Yev?
Great, thanks, Tricia. And I'm Yevgeny Sahenko, and in addition to being today's moderator, I'll also be a speaker. I'm a supervisor in GRF's Outsourced Accounting and Advisory Services Department. My experience has in the past been in public accounting, in auditing actually, specifically government contractors and professional services firms. I did a little stint in corporate accounting, seeing the other side of audit, I suppose. And now I'm back in public accounting in an outsourced accounting and advisory role with GRF, primarily servicing nonprofits, government contractors, and professional services firms. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Melissa.
All right, thank you guys. Thanks, team. Okay, so our agenda today. So we are going to be talking about key concepts behind technological innovation and technological disruption, and how to make informed decisions on when to adopt. Digital transformation, risk and rewards to look out for, an overview of accounting system assessments through the lens of digital transformation, and how to harness the culture of innovation. And finally, we'll conclude with some next steps in thinking through your long-term digital transformation strategy. Okay, so digital transformation. This can mean a lot of things to different organizations. We're really trying to cast a wide net here today and to really get you thinking about how to make your organization digitally transform. This could be, thought of as simply, turning the data that you have into insights. It can be considered, reshaping the workforce in the digital world. Unfortunately, many organizations are experiencing this right now with employees needing to work from home. And then organizations that had not already digitally transformed are currently likely suffering as a result of the coronavirus. And then also just digital transformation through the lens of just delivering to your stakeholder expectations, your members, your donors, your students, and the populations that you serve. Are you servicing them as best as you could and cost efficiently as you can? And also another concept, and this isn't all, inclusive, but privacy by design. In your digital transformations, are you, securing information through cybersecurity and by privacy by design? So those are some key concepts that we'll be thinking about today. Okay, so digital transformation. What is a barrier? What is keeping some organizations from not transforming? Pretty much across the board, lack of strategy. Maybe you have a strategy in place, a 3 to 5 year plan. Maybe you don't, maybe you do. Maybe you have one, but you haven't considered digital transformation in your strategy, and you may need to rethink that. I talk a lot about enterprise risk management, and I help organizations implement it. And one of the first things we do is we go, okay, well, hold on. Let's look at your strategy and let's think about risks to your strategy. And sometimes they haven't identified this as a risk. So actually the risk assessment process can influence your strategy, and your strategy can influence your risks. So, now that you're thinking about some of the risks out there, you may want to look back and redesign your strategy. Another helpful thing with enterprise risk management is it helps organizations prioritize. There's just so many projects, so many things to do. Enterprise risk management can help you look at the likelihood and impact of certain risks and helps you really prioritize, okay, these are the most important projects we need to be working on in order for us to execute our mission and our strategy. So we believe this is based on this graphic here, that these are some of the top barriers to organizations implementing. And then even with some of the most mature organizations, security is a big concern, and Ricardo's going to talk about that in the next few slides. Okay, turn it over to Yev to read the polling question here.
Great, thanks, Melissa. So we've reached our first polling question, and our question is, does your organization have a recent 3 to 5 year strategic plan developed? Yes for A, B for no, and C for unsure. And while everybody is submitting their responses, I will read off the first CPE word. That first CPE word is innovate. Remember, if you want to receive CPE credit, please jot these words down as I mentioned them, because you will need them for the survey following the webinar. Again, the first CPE word is innovate, INNOVATE.
Okay, great. It looks like the majority here say that they have a recent 3 to 5 year strategic plan developed, so that's fantastic. I just urge you guys to circle back, take another look at it, and after you're done with this webinar, maybe reconsider whether you have properly included digital transformation in your strategy. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Tricia now to talk about innovation versus disruption.
Thanks, Melissa. So innovation versus disruption. What is it? What are the differences? And how can we move forward in the age that we're in right now, or your organization and what stage they are in right now? So innovation as a definition is just doing the same things, only better. So when I think about it from a finance function or even from an auditing standpoint, right, we have lots of spreadsheets, and maybe taking those spreadsheets and either compiling them together or creating macros to help be able to run those processes a little bit more effectively and efficiently. That's innovation, right? So we're just continuing to do the same thing, but we're applying some kind of another level of a skill set on top of it to be able to just make it slightly better. Whereas disruption would say, okay, we've got these massive amount of spreadsheets, but what if instead of using these spreadsheets, we help to implement by the use of a different type of a software, or we think about it in a different terminology. So we're doing something completely new that takes the old process out of the way and makes it obsolete. So in our world, currently here at GRF with our audits, we have continued to do our audits the way that we have done. We're always innovating and making things better, but now we're kind of taking a step back and ultimately looking at a way, well, how do we disrupt this? From our standpoint, Ricardo and I have been talking even just as early as today about, okay, well, we typically go on site to our field or to our clients, and we sit in the field for a week or so working at the client site. We specifically only work on one client, but what if instead we disrupt that model and we sit down with all of our staff and we do a block scheduling and work on multiple clients all throughout the week instead. So that is kind of the difference from our standpoint of what innovation versus disruption is. So how can you apply that to your organization? Again, we're going to talk a little bit about some of your accounting system assessments later in the presentation, and maybe talking through some RPA robotic process and automation that you could put into place to help with that process as well. This quote that you see on your screen currently, as I was reading and doing some research related to this topic a while ago, really struck a chord with me. CFOs must begin to experiment, however, or risk falling behind other functional groups in the organization and other companies in the industry whose digital transformations are already underway. They might lose a golden opportunity to help drive the business agenda. The reason why this struck such a chord with me, as I mentioned, I worked a short stint of my career within an association, and it was a large association, about $50 million in revenue in total. It had a C3 education and research arm, a C6 association that had a huge annual meeting, and then it also had a C3 foundation. Well, as a part of that organization and the 170 or so staff that we had, we saw a lot, or I saw a lot of really good digital transformation occurring in the world of membership and in the world of our online resources. We created a university online for training, for education, for compliance, for continuing education for all of our members. But from the finance function, we were still paper. All of our invoices were paper. All of our journal entries were paper. Everything was paper. For the most part. Reconciliations were done through a spreadsheet. Our budget process was done through a spreadsheet with 30 different departments, and some of those departments had 25 worksheets within one workbook. So it was a very tedious process, and I saw that as an opportunity that we could have moved forward and also helped help the other areas within the organization, or the other departments within the organization, to be able to move their process forward by way of teeing things up on our end, making it more effective, efficient, and ultimately giving us the time and space available to help with their process. So as I mentioned, that one of the things that we can do in the nonprofit world, for instance, is this little continuum of a grid that you see on your screen. Number one, what are some of the rewards that we have as we go through a transformation process in a digital standpoint? Well, we can improve our member experience, our donor experience, or even some of our constituents that we might have out there from our organization standpoint. Obviously, we talked a lot already about increasing the efficiency. When you create efficiencies, obviously that drives your business decision making in a more analytical sense. You can see things from a more holistic standpoint versus just looking into one specific area. And then when we do that, we're also improving our innovation, right? So from creating some of those items, we can not only do some disruption, but we can also help to innovate the things that are already there and are doing well. And then ultimately, from a strategic standpoint that Melissa already talked about, we can transform our business into that vision that we have from that 3 to 5 year standpoint. So reshaping the finance function, again, we can improve our processes through automation and through robotics. So a lot of our organizations that we've been working with have moved towards Bill.com, for instance, as a way to pay their invoices from a cloud-based system. It takes away a lot of the paper. Invoices are pushed directly into that system via a fax or a phone number or an email address. And then they're also looking at doing some kind of a scanning for some of those invoices that might come through paper and working with a system that reads it from an OCR standpoint and keys it into the actual general ledger itself as well. A lot of our clients are also moving more towards the cloud-based software. I think you're going to see a big push in the coming years, probably in the next, I would say at least 3 years, that a lot of our accounting systems are going to be solely cloud-based, most likely. I know QuickBooks is already moving towards that and is discontinuing their desktop. I think a lot of association management systems are also moving more towards a cloud-based system and will also be getting rid of their standalone products. So again, you're going to see this, and how does that help? Well, that obviously helps because number one, your updates aren't going to be outdated anymore, right? So from that standpoint, you've got perpetual updates. And then on top of it, some of these automations and robotics that we can use are continuously learning from what we do. So while they are working in the background, there is some human interaction that they have from a supervision learning standpoint where someone would have to obviously go through and review what that system is doing on at least some kind of a frequency basis and ensure that it's accurate and it's at least continuing to do what it needs to do appropriately for what the organization needs it to do. So as you go through that process, little nuances that you might be picking up and telling it, no, you should have done this instead, it's going to continue to learn. As we move towards that, we can have real-time financial information with data visualization. So building out a dashboard for your organization is probably a really good step for some of, at least some of the more sophisticated or larger organizations that you have out there, systems that apply things across the board. So working in the association, instead of having someone from membership or someone from conventions and meetings emailing me and asking me specifically for, well, can you give me a snapshot of what our department spreadsheet or balance sheet happens to look like, or what our profit and loss is for the year. Instead, they'll be able to visualize that directly from the dashboard themselves. They're taking us out of that standpoint and able to interpret it and make business decisions in real time. There's no lag as far as that goes. So again, we're accelerating that timeline, and we can help to uncover, again, what those hidden values are, what those opportunities are. How can we, again, align that with our strategic plan and our function?
Great, thanks, Tricia. And so with that, we've reached our second polling question, and it is the top financial officer at your organization exploring ways in which to automate the finance function? Is it A, no, we currently have not explored these options? B, we are in discovery mode but have not yet implemented any automated processes? Or C, yes, we have begun implementing automation in our finance processes? Please take a moment to answer. While everybody's submitting their answers, I'll provide the second CPE word. Our second CPE word is risk. Remember, if you want to receive CPE credit, please jot these words down as they are given, as you will need them for the survey following our webinar. Again, the second CPE word is risk, R-I-S-K.
So it looks like we have a couple of different options that have been answered, mostly that everyone seems to either be in discovery mode but not implemented, or you've begun implementing the automation in your finance processes. So a few of you are still wavering on the no, not really looking into those options yet. I would urge you, especially where we are today with COVID-19, is that really this is the time. Now is the time to start looking into this. I don't think we really have an option at this point. Digital transformation is now a must. It's no longer a consideration, I believe. Just speaking from our experience of what we are experiencing on our end from the audit standpoint, we're currently working with some of our clients to move their audits to a completely virtual standpoint, but we are struggling with some of them because they're still paper. So, this is the time to start looking into that now.
Great, thank you. So with that, we move into one of the hot topics of digital transformation, and is IT risk. Organizations are quickly running towards being competitive and against their peers. And one of the things that needs to be understood is that IT is one of the biggest challenges that's really facing organizations nowadays to be able to stay competitive. So there were a few surveys that were done in the past, by various organizations. And in fact, one of the top challenges to getting started in the digital transformation are the concerns about cybersecurity. This is one of the things that organizations are coming in and saying, okay, yeah, we want to stay competitive, we want to stay ahead of the curve, but how about cybersecurity? How do we tackle that? How do we look into that to make sure that we still protect the information and we do what we're supposed to be doing so that we stay competitive at the same time, but we become disruptive, kind of like what Trisha said in the past, before. And also, one of the top digital threats that are really considered right now are cyber attacks or privacy breaches. This is one of those threats that organizations have to think about. So, each year, obviously, more organizations are moving from the physical to the digital world, and they need to really come in and say, okay, how do we protect that information? The PCI compliance standards are really helpful on following for organizations to take a look at, because they help really implement a lot of these standards and a lot of those policies and procedures that are a must to be able to protect some of this information. The digital transformation, let me go over here. The digital transformation, as we talked about, it's the integration of digital technology that really encompasses all areas of the organization. One thing that I can think about digital transformation is Lego is a really good example. It's a company that I've read about in the past, and they were on the brink of filing bankruptcy, and they had to go through a huge transformation internally. They had to come in and say, okay, these little bricks that kids are using are great, and we're making some money, but clearly interest is being lost. So we need to become disruptive and find out what can we implement. And they went into the movie business. They went into the amusement park business as well by opening a park down in Florida and a couple other areas, I believe. But that shows what businesses are going through to be able to survive in this very, very competitive environment. So something to think about. And obviously with that, it comes in with third parties. What are organizations doing to manage third-party providers? Because there's a lot of huge bridges that have come into third-party providers. And I know Melissa and I and all of us here at the firm talk hugely about third-party providers and how are those being managed, and do organizations have a good inventory of those third-party providers? What kind of information are those third-party providers handling? And what is the risk, right, that those third-party providers are handling? Because at the end of the day, it's not going to be the third-party provider being on the front page of the Washington Post. Never mind the front page of the paper. Social media nowadays, right? Paper is kind of like gone. So really, I mean, we heard about the Pentagon being breached and having all these issues last year or 2 years ago, and it was through a third-party provider, Target. I mean, you name these big breaches, and they have come into other organizations. Cybersecurity, and at the same time, it's also about preventing fraud. Organizations need to implement some strong policies and procedures to be able to evolve and to be able to stay competitive. And what do organizations do? What do they have to do? And I'm going to have a couple little best practices here in the next couple of slides, but also organizations need to be acting as if a breach has already occurred, or there was already a hacker in the network, and trust me, there is already a hacker in the network. There's already people watching, and that's why there was a lot of emails going back and forth, phishing emails. And I was actually speaking with a client the other day, and he was saying, well, I don't understand how they know who actually manages the money in the organization. These emails are targeting the people within the organization that are obviously, or give the approvals to either wire money or transfer money or do any of these things. So I wonder how they know that. And we were chatting, and I said, it's because they're watching. They're watching constantly all the time, and they're just waiting for the right moment to hit and to strike. And that's why they strike the right people. And it's about training. It's about doing many different things. And again, adopting those policies and procedures that are hugely necessary for organizations to prevent that fraud from happening, protecting the sensitive data, and also analyzing the consequences of a breach if it were to happen. What is the organization doing? Does it have a good plan plan to come back into business as quickly as possible. A disaster recovery plan, is that implemented right now to be able to, again, analyze and see what could happen if a breach were to occur. So with that, we'll go with our third polling question. So yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Ricardo. Yeah, our third polling question is, cybersecurity is one of the top concerns in digital transformation. How has your organization, has it had a cybersecurity risk assessment performed? Is it A for yes, B for no, or C for unsure? Once again, please take a moment to answer. While everybody's recording their answer, I'll provide the final CPE word. Our final CPE word for today is culture. Remember, if you want to receive CPE credit, you'll need this word for the end of the webinar when the survey will come. Again, the final CPE word is culture, C-U-L-T-U-R-E.
So while people answer the questions and we get the results here, this is a very interesting question, and I truly believe that organizations, this should be one of the first steps to be able to analyze how the organization stands from a cybersecurity posture standpoint. And as it starts to embark on that digital transformation journey, it should really have a good idea. Organizations should really have a good idea whether they're ready, at least from a cybersecurity standpoint, and whether or not things need to be fixed from that area. And as we can see here, most organizations, we have about 45% responding, yes, they've had a cybersecurity risk assessment performed. So I'm really happy to see that. A couple of those are saying no, and we have about 41% that are unsure. Now, this is important. This is really key because it really tackles the challenges that organizations are falling through right now, and also the fact that organizations need to really have that idea before they embark on something that is totally unknown. And that's really what sometimes digital transformation could be. Organizations could be going to the cloud, and really they need to understand what the risks of going to the cloud are. They need to understand, okay, where's that information going, and are we ready from a cybersecurity standpoint if something were to happen at that particular level.
And I think, Ricardo, maybe you could speak a little bit more to this too, but CFOs and those who are in the finance function may see this as more of an IT side of the house type of thing, but really it's also something that does integrate very well with the finance function in understanding, again, as you mentioned, moving towards the things, because there can be an impact on some of the financial transactions within an organization.
Correct. I mean, that's a very valid point. I mean, CFOs and the finance department, the finance teams within organizations need to be heavily involved in this endeavor as well, because the impact is going to be within those departments as well. It's not just the IT department, but it's, I would say, obviously, it's the whole organization overall. And more of this. Go ahead, Melissa. I know you wanted to.
Sorry, Ricardo. Yeah, no, I was just going to add, I'm just glad you guys brought that up, because a lot of times, organizations are just completely outsourcing IT. And so now the CFO is really acting as the IT department in many ways, managing system, implementations and upgrades, but then also all these third-party cloud systems, they're managing the contracts with them. You got to think about, what's in the contract, what third party you're working with, and they're also managing the access for employees, which traditionally back in the day when the servers were on site, IT managed the access. So if somebody gets terminated, they got to make sure they have timely, removal from the systems, and there could be multiple systems that need to be removed from, and IT is really not looking, and so there's some gaps there. In some regards we've transformed so fast that we really haven't changed the model, and we're exposing ourselves to more risk.
That's totally correct, and it shows how these policies and procedures are so important within the organization, because again, the turnover could be, it's something that all organizations go through. So if somebody else comes in and there's not something that person could actually follow, like for instance, the cloud access control, the third party provider may be managing that, but at the same time, if that person comes in and doesn't know what the organization's policy is in terms of terminating those employees that all of a sudden are no longer with the organization, then really that policy should be strict, strictly identified so that somebody can easily follow it. And not just that, but just anything in relation to any new endeavor that the organization is going through. It really has to take the time to document those policies and procedures so that anybody could just come in and step on those other person's shoes and really follow through and not really put the organization in jeopardy. So I want to put out some best practice benchmarking analysis here. And the sense.gov, it's a nonprofit organization that puts some really good critical security controls. And again, these are some items that we've come to find out as we have performed various and many cybersecurity risk assessments and IT audits for many of our clients. And again, these don't have to be followed one by one, but it's a good idea for organizations to take a look. And I encourage everyone to go to the sense.gov website. They have some really good controls and takeaways here, but you can see here that there are many steps that organizations should really be taking. And again, like I said before, it doesn't have to be in this particular order, but just go through and see what's the biggest impact for a particular organization. For example, secure configurations for network devices. So let's say, for instance, organizations are going through and have they really come up with an inventory of all the physical and digital assets that are connected to the organization's network. Hopefully there was an inventory, and there should be an inventory so that organizations know where the risk could possibly be. I mean, there's many instances where a thermostat, for instance, could be connected to the network, and a hacker can actually come into that thermostat and really hack into the information and steal information. And sometimes the IT department might be like, we don't know. We didn't know that a hacker could come in through a thermostat or a smart TV or many other devices that are now connected to the internet, popularly known as the Internet of Things. So again, I would encourage organizations and everyone to go through this data protection, data recovery capability, many other things that really should be followed here to help protect the organization and really help build a good foundation to move to this digital transformation, if you will. And again, the IT risk strategy, it's about basically 4 steps that I think should constantly be revisited. Assessing the risk, document those policies and procedures, train. I cannot emphasize enough, organizations, I think there's a much better level of awareness now within organizations about the training and how these emails are coming in, and really the best way of avoiding anything to happen through emails is really train the employees to become more aware of the security issues and any potentials. I mean, we've seen it all. We've seen hackers coming in, requesting funds immediately, pretending to be the CFO or the president of the organization. They somehow find out that that person is traveling overseas or abroad, and they come in and say, look, I'm stranded here in the middle of nowhere. Please, I need you to transfer money to this bank account ASAP, or pay this vendor or pay that vendor ASAP. And we've always told our clients, there's nothing that really requires that sense of urgency. If you ever get an email like that, just pick up the phone, call somebody before you do anything. Hey, I need you to come in and buy these gift cards and give me the numbers on the back of the gift cards right away because we're giving them away. Anything that sounds fishy like that, just training our staff and our employees to become aware of what the possibilities are, and then of course monitor to make sure that this cycle here of assessing, documenting policies, the training, everything gets monitored and then documented within the organization as best as it could to, again, create that foundation for the digital transformation, which again, it's something that it's a must right now, like Trisha said. I think organizations that don't and go through this digital transformation or think about it are going to start falling behind. We are seeing it in the audit practice with the artificial intelligence. Those firms that don't embrace artificial intelligence are going to be left behind in the next few years because organizations or clients are going to demand it. And those that don't embrace it are going to be, again, a little bit in trouble right there. So with that, we'll turn it over to Jeff to go through the accounting systems, which seems to be a really exciting topic as well, and is all part of the digital transformation.
Great, yeah, excellent. Thanks, Ricardo. And actually, so really, I mean, if you think about the kind of introspectively, I'd like everybody to kind of think about their specific accounting department and their function. And the next few slides are going to be a little bit of, hopefully, a wake-up call but if nothing else, kind of a call to action. And before I jump in, one last polling question, and it is, have you had an accounting assessment done by a third party in the past year? A for yes, B for no, C for not in the past year, but we will have one in the near future, and D, what is an accounting assessment? And so the last polling question we had, that was the final CPE word, so no CPE word this time, but I'll give everybody another few seconds to register their responses. Okay, it looks like most of the attendees have not had one, nor does it look like they're planning one. So as I was trying to say earlier, basically it is a very popular engagement that we are seeing in the outsourced accounting and advisory practice. A lot of our clients are asking for this, both as a means to, one, just kind of see where things are as far as their accounting function, but two, get some actionable recommendations for how to elevate themselves to a future state that is scalable and sustainable. And with that being said, I'd like to kind of maybe again turn a little bit more introspective and ask yourself a few questions. Really what we're seeing on our end is that the accounting function and department is really still just a cost center, and three main symptoms that we see of that is that you're getting these monthly reports, and most likely they're very standardized. They're coming directly out of your accounting system with very little customization, very little insight, and there's not really much that you can do with that report. It's kind of one of those things, maybe you look at your cash balance, maybe you look at your AR balance, and you kind of file it away and move on. The other symptom that we're seeing with this cost center type accounting function is that the real stamp of performance at the year end is how clean your audit is, and that's really the judge of how well your accounting function executed throughout the year, with obviously the clean audit indicating that everything is fine, the accounting function is doing their job, everybody's happy. And then finally, and probably most importantly, as far as a symptom, is that the accounting function is very much disconnected from operations. And what that in practice means for us is that when I speak to a lot of the accountants in performing these accounting assessments, they really see their role as, well, I'm just here to report on the business. I'm not here to really necessarily even understand the business or care to know why different departments are doing the things that they're doing. But interestingly enough, a lot of the times what the other departments are doing will trickle its way into the accounting and the financial statements, and accounting needs to be aware of that. So again, as you kind of think about your particular accounting function and department, there's really four key areas that I urge you to think about. Number one being systems, and I think we've all kind of touched upon it already in the webinar, but are your systems, are they integrated? Are they hopefully in the cloud? And are they capturing data that's both financial and making its way directly into the financial statements, but maybe more importantly, some of the non-financial data, things like donor engagement, stakeholder satisfaction, maybe your geographic penetration, things like that again is not readily disclosed in financial statements, but it certainly makes its way into the numbers one way or the other. And then when you think about processes, chances are it's still paper-based. There's probably still a lot of processes and steps you're doing that are very duplicative. And perhaps maybe more importantly, as far as processes are concerned, are there any internal controls built into your processes to make sure that you're having strong, control over your key assets? And then when you think about your people, are they kind of, for lack of a better word, human robots? Are your accountants really doing the same thing every month? It's very cyclical. It's almost, I hate to use the word, but a little bit mindless, to the point where if you ask them a question or maybe advice on managing your strategic goals, there's not really much input because they see themselves as, just there to report on the results. And then finally, and again, I already touched upon it, but when it comes to reporting, are you getting actionable reports? Are they allowing you to execute on your goals? And so really the main question that you have to be asking yourself with respect to your accounting department is my accounting function equipped to handle the future demands of my organization? And with all that being said, I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide because Trisha actually summarized cloud-based technology very well. The one thing I will add to that is, I think the one beauty of this cloud-based environment that we see ourselves in is that because a lot of these application software programs are moving to the cloud, they're now able to talk to one another. And the beauty there is that traditionally, where you would have to pay, either a setup fee or a recurring annual fee for an ERP-like system, nowadays, because you have so many different software packages able to do different things that were traditionally housed in an ERP system, now they can all talk to one another. They don't necessarily have to be part of the same package, but you can connect them using application program interfaces, basically a way for them to talk. And now, presumably, as Trisha had mentioned earlier, the data is more real time because they're constantly in sync. And so the next two technologies, again, Trisha had touched upon them, so I won't spend too much time, but I just want to maybe shed a little bit of light on the key difference between the two. RPA really are those tasks being performed by humans that are very tedious and probably more importantly, very standardized. They're very step-by-step, they're almost linear. Whereas artificial intelligence is the kind of task that can be very tedious, but also can change with time and can throw, wrenches into the process. Something different can happen in every iteration. And that's where artificial intelligence is equipped to handle those situations. Again, robotic process automation is really only going to do exactly what it's being coded to do. Whereas artificial intelligence can learn as it sees patterns and things that it's doing, and over time continue to build its intelligence and handle new situations as they arise. So it's really, if you want to go back to innovation versus disruption, robotic process automation probably is going to tilt more to the scale of innovation, although for some organization can be disruption, whereas the real disruptor is going to be artificial intelligence. And so finally, then the question then becomes, I'm probably not in the ideal current state, but how do I get to a future state? And what we're seeing very, very popular nowadays is an accounting assessment, which is kind of what it sounds like. It's just a way for you to bring in a third party and evaluate your accounting function across the three key areas of systems, processes, and people. And the goal of an accounting assessment is really to come out with a report with actionable recommendations to get you to a future state that can hopefully allow you to sustainably execute on your strategic goals. And just three key tips if you are considering an accounting assessment: make sure that whoever is doing it is considering your strategic goals and aligning your accounting function back to those strategic goals to be able to report on them and hopefully execute on them. And then number two, don't only focus in on the accounting staff, definitely talk to people outside of accounting, because you're going to start to find that really accounting permeates throughout the organization and other departments are very much in tune to it. So that being said, I'll hand it back over to Melissa.
All right, thank you, Yevgeny. Okay, so we're going to transition over to culture. Now, we've been talking about strategy, and I'm asking you guys to look at your strategy and rethink it. And now I'm going to stop and say, well, sorry, but culture is going to eat your strategy for breakfast. That's like one of my favorite quotes, but it's so true, and we're really seeing it more and more today, especially with all the changes. And in order to really capitalize on the rewards of transformation and minimize the risk, organizations need to develop and encourage the right culture. We've all been in work environments where people are resistant to change. These are the organizations that are going to struggle in 2020 and beyond. Organizations that can embrace the culture of innovation will thrive. Innovation culture can be described as a nurturing environment that continually introduces new ideas or ways of thinking that then translates into action to solve problems and seize opportunities. I'm kind of surprised, Ricardo, you didn't bring up Blockbuster. That's like one of our favorite things to talk about, how, you look at Blockbuster and why they're not here anymore. But they didn't see what was right in front of them. I liked your Lego example and all the things that they did. And that's something that Blockbuster, I love Blockbuster, but this, and you can see now with the coronavirus, how, we're telling people like, hey, these risks to your strategy, these are like game-ending, changes that need to be made.
Like think about the cruise lines, right, Melissa? Think about the cruise lines now that are canceling all these cruises and everything. And what are they doing, right? What's their plan? What's their strategy? So yeah, all this stuff.
So the speed of risk is very real, and you need to embrace the culture of innovation. So let's say now you're like, okay, we're convinced we're going to put digital transformation into our strategy. We're going to do this. Well, guess what? Your innovation can fail. Sorry. There's countless stories of organizations that have went to implement something, lost a bunch of money, it didn't end up working. They're trying to close the books. It takes even longer. And so that's something else to really think about is project management. So inappropriately trained teams, not devoted to the initiative, or just inflexible or inefficient project management. Some things to do here are to really think about, a pre-implementation audit. So let's say that you're going to engage in a project. I suggest you have a project charter, or at least identify what your goals and objectives are and what are some of the metrics to say, okay, this is a successful project. And then possibly even internally, or have a third party come in to do a pre-audit. So, there's concepts like, let's say GDPR applies to you. Well, privacy by design is key. From cybersecurity perspective, you're supposed to consider any private data, as part of your design. So little things like that can really go a long way. And then also post-implementation audits. When I was talking about the access controls or, different cybersecurity things to consider. So pre and post are always good ways to make sure your project is a success. Also, with those project charters, you should be having some kind of budget, some kind of rails, some red flags that you can, go in and start to make some decisions as needed. The other way to really ensure success and also the culture of innovation is to have executive sponsorship. Sometimes with certain things, it's really like all about marketing internally. So if you have this poor project manager going around getting on people's nerves, no one wants to change the system, everybody's upset. But what if it was the CFO or the executive director or somebody higher up going around and getting people excited and letting them know that they're going to be involved and they're going to have input and, how exciting it is. And the attitudes will change. And that is a game changer. So it's really important to make sure executive is sponsoring it, but also, going around, maybe sending out emails, talking about it, encouraging the right culture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, I'm a fan of project management. I'm a project manager, but it's so important. And we go in and we've done post-implementation audits, and I'll talk to the project managers. They're like, I have a day job. I was asked to oversee this system implementation, and I just didn't have the time. We were all overworked, and, we did the best we could. And I'm like, I get it, but it's really, the project management is really, really important. But to really know that you've done a good job, at the end of the day, you want to make sure that that it actually satisfied the requirements that you defined in your project charter. If you didn't have a project charter, well, then how do you know you even, accomplished what you wanted to do? And if you went ahead and did the budgeting, you'll know, okay, we fell within budget. Or, maybe some of the people are asking for all these configurations, which is great, but maybe it's not so great because future upgrades are going to cost you more. So some kind of like rails against, in the project management field against over customization, under customization. So it really helps to have somebody involved to help you as you're going along this journey. But ultimately, also user acceptance is another key concept. Allowing the users, the people that are going to be using these systems before it goes into production, actually get a chance to get their hands on it and test it and come up with, and they should be coming up in a lot of ways with the tests themselves. Like, okay, well, this wacky scenario comes up all the time. And some people didn't even know about it. Like, oh yeah, sometimes we enter things in this way. So they got to put their input in and actually test those systems so that those systems might need to be redesigned. You make sure and test them. You have the users actually accept it before it gets implemented. I think that part of it really makes them help feel engaged. And it's just part of good project management and like IT security as well, because you don't want something to go live that could completely shut your organization down. All right, so just some things, just high-level things to take away as you're, looking towards your 2020 transformations and beyond. Just make sure you align it to your strategic plan, to your overall mission and objectives. Where do you want to be? Don't end up like Blockbuster. So you want to identify someone at an executive level to really sponsor. And, I don't know if you need to get your marketing team or your communications team to kind of coach them up. This is a big deal. It's a really big deal. And it's very important. You're going to want to map your transformation plan to your existing environment. And at that point, once you think you're ready, you'll probably want to do a pre-implementation assessment by someone else. It doesn't have to be a third party, but just have someone else come to look at it. Hopefully your project team is already thinking, okay, what are the risks and what are the issues? What could go wrong? They're managing this like a little project to really be able to quickly resolve things as it moves along. You'll want to make sure you're communicating to the stakeholders so that they understand the benefits and the challenges. And hopefully, not only your project manager is doing that, but the executive sponsor is doing that. And at the end of it, or even during it, you're monitoring, making sure that these customizations aren't going over the top, making sure that, you're staying within budget, you're staying within the timeline, and all of those kinds of good things that need to happen. All right, so some final takeaways. When you're thinking about digital transformation and what you want to do, we suggest really starting, because you only have so much money to invest in these projects, but really maybe think about starting with the member, the donor, the student, your constituents' experience. Obviously accounting function is important and that should also be looked at, but also there's you want to also consider the experience of the people that you're serving and how can you, better change that, whether it's with fundraising or different types of strategies. You want to also look past your competitors. This is something I've been hearing a lot. So let's say you're an association. Don't just look at other associations and what they're doing. Look at someone in the tech industry. Look past them. Don't be afraid to really embrace something like robotic process automation or artificial intelligence. And lastly, and obviously, please don't neglect the culture and the project management. Sometimes those get missed, but I think it can really be key for you being successful in your digital transformation strategy. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great, thanks, Melissa. And one quick point to your point about, I really liked when you mentioned that, don't just look at other organizations that are similar structurally to yours, look outside, maybe even your industry. I can definitely attest to that. I came from an environment in my corporate accounting days, from a tech company actually, and just their culture of innovation and their really just hunger for data and how important it is to every decision they make. Mm-hmm. It really stuck with me. And it's something that I try to kind of emphasize with my clients in an outsourced accounting engagement as well. Just as your outsourced accountant, I'm not only concerned about the finances, and the numbers that appear in your financial statements. There's other data out there that one could argue probably is even more important to, really managing your organization from an operational standpoint. So.
And then it also talks about, data that's so important. So what's the organization doing to collect that data, right? Because that's kind of like a way of disruption and being innovative. So if organizations are still in the paper mode and still kind of like collecting data paper-based, well, guess what? That's going to take you a long time to really do some data analytics. And by the time you actually compile all that data, it's going to be obsolete.
Yeah.
So, so organizations need to really, again, go through a digital transformation scenario and attitude, if you will, and figure out, okay, how are we going to collect this information? How are we going to collect all this data that's exponentially increasing by the second right now? And if we don't get this data on time, then we're going to be too late to the game, too late to the party. And then, of course, other organizations are being innovative, are being disruptive, and obviously are hungry, like you said, to collect this data. So something to really point out. So, but again, obviously keeping all these risks and culture and everything else that we just talked about,
Yeah, no, absolutely. So with that being said, before we wrap up, there's a few questions we want to answer that were submitted by some online participants and anybody else from the room. So it looks like, first question, and it feels like an audit and a systems examination is similar to an accounting assessment. How do they differ, and why might I want an accounting assessment in addition to an audit? I guess I can maybe speak from my experience here. I think one thing definitely to consider is an audit. The goal of an audit is to provide reasonable assurance, right? So with an accounting assessment, you have to remember that there's no real assurance being provided. It's really a consultative engagement designed really with wherever you want your third-party firm or whoever's conducting it to focus in on. And the goal really of an accounting assessment is to provide you a report with recommendations for improvement. Whereas an audit, you get your audit report that gives the opinion on your financial statements. Both are extremely valuable. It's just a slightly different, I suppose, scope. I guess another consideration to keep in mind is there's this concept of independence when it comes to audits. Accounting assessments, because you don't inherently need to be independent unless it's, perhaps maybe also an audit client. You have more leeway in some respects with recommendations you can make and systems and things like that. So
yeah, and
Hey, Yev, sorry, both of you guys. I just wanted to say one additional, so Yev, like you were talking about like the automatic integrations. I just had a client I was talking to the other day that they moved to automatic integrations with their different cloud systems. And then it was taking them longer to close because they were trying to reconcile it all at the end of the month. But like you could come in and actually help them say, no, you can do this throughout the month and actually speed up your close. So, and Trisha, I'll let you go ahead and make a comment as well.
Yeah, so I used to do some accounting assessments by way of like organizational assessments too in my past part of my career. And one of the big differences to me is that from an audit standpoint, we're auditing your financial transactions, whereas when we came in and did organizational or accounting assessments, what we're really looking for is where the pain points are from an organization standpoint. So where do we feel like things are kind of getting hosed up almost in a sense, right? And there are duplicate efforts being performed or things that seem to take a really long time. Those are the things that I think Yev was really talking about, where the recommendations come out. Well, because we can talk to 6 to 10 different people and start to see the trend and the patterns. But whereas when you're inside the organization and very attentive to the detail, it's hard to look at it from that very broad overview. So I think that's kind of the main difference there.
No, absolutely.
And it also helps during the audit process too. I mean, if the organization, we have had a couple clients that have gone through the accounting assessment, and obviously speeds up the audit process, and it makes it helps for a much more efficient audit process. Let's say if organizations have really gone through the exercise of having an accounting assessment, which I believe is very important, and like Trisha said, it really brings a different perspective and a different set of eyes looking at it from the outside. Whereas sometimes internally speaking, you can't see it because you're in the middle of it and the storm is right around you, and you don't really realize some of the benefits that could really be implemented. And I highly recommend it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So it looks like question number 2, what types of RPA do you typically see being used in the finance function? I guess maybe this one I can get your perspective, Trisha, and then I can add kind of my perspective from an outsourcing type.
Yeah, so I think I mentioned a couple of them when we were going through the presentation itself with the bill.com. It's a little bit of an RPA process, right? It's automated in the approval process. It's automated from a standpoint of sending out the bills automatically, or the payments, I should say, for your invoices and bills. Also, a lot of the integration with QuickBooks Online, be able to connect directly to a bank account, downloading that information to be able to key it in. I have a couple of organizations as well who work with, for instance, some expense reimbursement or credit card charge applications where the expenses automatically get coded based on the type of category that it falls into and the actual department that the employee who's made the charge falls into. So those are the types of things that we're seeing. From our standpoint, we're also implementing RPA on our audits, right? So we've got an artificial intelligence software that we're starting to use and implement too, which, speaking to some of my peer groups who are in industry, who work for a lot of for-profits, they're starting to use things like Power, I think it's BI, business intel or whatever it might be, to look at analytically, be able to look at things in real time. So those are some other things that if you're a more sophisticated organization, you could also move to from my standpoint. But what are you seeing?
Yeah, no, we're definitely seeing a lot of that, and we're trying to push a lot of those things onto our, not push them, but definitely recommend them to our clients, the things like bill.com, the expense management software, all of that. The other thing that we're doing from our end, as far as an outsourced accounting function, we're actually trying to see how we can implement RPA for our processes to handle those outsourcing engagements more efficiently. So we're kind of starting small. So one use case that we're examining is potentially using RPA to fetch reports that we need to download on a monthly basis from the same website every single time. Have RPA do it. There's absolutely no reason why a human should spend, sometimes it could be an hour every month downloading the same report when a robot can do it much more quickly, much more accurately. So we're starting small, but it's certainly a very exciting technology for us. So with that, I just want to mention one quick thing. For those that may be interested, GRF is actually partnering with the North Carolina State University Poole School of Management for our second annual ERM and nonprofit organizations workshop. It's a great opportunity for anyone interested in exploring ERM more deeply in relation to nonprofits. Additional details can be found on our website. And with that, we'd like to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. We encourage you all to follow us on social media at grfcpas.com and visit our website at www.grfcpa.com for upcoming events and alerts. Please remember to complete the survey that follows if you'd like to earn your CPE credit for attending today's webinar. Thank you all once again and have a great day.